3 tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fernelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where Zach was asking, is DK's offensive coordinator interview running over? Look, I am not a news breaker. Okay. But if I could be cryptic, he was in Tallahassee, and he's not on the show yet.
And he gave us no reason for not being here.
And he didn't let us know. So look, maybe, but I think that offensive coordinator is thinking small for Danny Cannell. I see a university position. I see in somewhere high up in the athletic department. I think that's what we should be wondering right now. Is he angling potentially to be, I don't know, vice president of the whole university? We'll see. Danny Cannell, he will be back on Thursday for our episode of The Locks. This is a Wednesday episode, which of course means we are going to be given our look inside some of the biggest matchups of the weekend. Love the feedback from last week and the last couple of weeks from Wednesday's show, because I think what a lot of listeners who maybe haven't been rolling with us for years and years and years understand is that this is our chance to talk football. We do our just straight up, bets, best bets, gambling stuff, super sicko first quarter plays. Like that's going to be on Thursday in the Lock Show. Now we're really digging into the actual matchups. It's one of my favorite shows of the day as well. First, Bud, we missed you last night. Any softball stats and any thoughts on the playoff rankings reaction that we might not have gotten to on Tuesday night?
Softball stats actually went 0 for 3. So extremely disappointing there.
Yeah.
But did made 2 sick picks at first, and also had a diving pick to go double off a guy.
Golden Glove reel. Put it on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I was surprised. I'm usually not a glove first guy, and it just sometimes like it's hit kind of at you, and you just react to it. So that was good. But 0 for 3, got to get that fixed because the wind was blowing out last night, and just I was sometimes you're just early on it,
You're getting older now. Welcome to life as utility infielder.
Exactly. And we got some fast guys now, so I don't have to play outfield anymore. It's quite nice. Okay, my thoughts on the rankings. I was a little surprised Miami didn't drop more than they did. I thought they would give a lot of credit to Alabama for blasting LSU, and they didn't get Alabama above Notre Dame or above Miami, which surprised me a little bit. I'm not entirely surprised that they dropped Georgia to where they did, because in their minds they know that Georgia either wins or it is most likely out. I think there's like a 5% chance that Georgia gets in with a loss to Tennessee. But for most intents and purposes, I do think that this is an elimination game for the Bulldogs. A little more down ballot. I am surprised that they kept LSU in where they did. And LSU is going to be favored in all remaining games. So that's probably going to stick as like a really good win for Alabama and for Texas A&M, et cetera, because if they keep winning, they're not going to drop out. I'm not entirely convinced that if LSU had dropped out and they had kept winning, that they would have re-entered. So to me, while the committee does not typically seem to follow its precedent on a week-to-week basis, and we've discussed this on the show many times, like they're just like, oh, well, that was last week's logic. Here's this week's logic, right? They do behave down ballot similarly to pollsters, in that if you don't lose, you are unlikely to actually drop out. So I think LSU will remain as a quality win for Alabama and for A&M, et cetera, and for USC, obviously. But that's got to piss off Tennessee fans, I think, quite a bit. And probably probably Indiana fans as well. I'm not saying LSU should have been dropped out, but I think the fact that they were not does help some of these SEC teams' resumes quite a bit. Clearly, one of Missouri or South Carolina will drop out probably for the final time this weekend because they play one another. Their rooting interest there. I think Tennessee fans want South Carolina to win because it shortens the resume of Alabama, right? Because Bama's got that blowout win over Missouri. Obviously, I think Bama fans are probably rooting for Missouri to win because if Missouri wins, there's a very good chance that they remain ranked for the rest of the season. And
they stay in the playoff hunt.
Redemption shot. Like if South Carolina beats Clemson, then South Carolina could jump back in. Tennessee fans are like, let's chop down this Bama resume. Let's shorten it a little bit. Let's refocus the committee's focus on the head-to-head if we do lose it to Georgia this weekend. Whereas Bama fans are like, look how deep our resume is. You know, that's kind of something that I'm tracking in these rankings.
Tom,
over half the SEC is in. So the loser of South Carolina, Mizzou getting knocked out will mean only half the league is in. That's a detriment to the league.
I had not. Hey, here's a question Tom posed me last night. Do you think that Clemson could get back in as an at-large 10-2?
No.
Yeah. South Carolina beats Missouri, so they stay in. South Carolina, do they have one more game between Missouri and Clemson?
Yeah, it's got 3 weeks left. And
yeah, 6-3. So if South Carolina is a ranked, like, is that gap too much to make up?
First of all, LSU already has 3 losses, so they can't be 10-2.
I didn't say LSU. I said Clemson.
Why did I hear LSU?
Did I say LSU?
No, you know what it is? Never mind, Chip. That's on me.
Okay.
I have LSU on my brain from writing that story this morning before the show started.
I do not think that Clemson can get in as an at-large, barring just complete chaos.
Right. Their path is the ACC championship, which they have not been totally eliminated from, but they'll need to beat Pitt and get a lot of help elsewhere from teams like Syracuse, like get the Miami losses. Like you need a little bit of chaos ahead of you in the standings, even as the Clemson Tigers are currently second in the ACC standings. They do not have the head-to-head tiebreaker against Miami because of common opponents. Clemson's loss to Louisville really, really hurts because Miami beat Louisville. And before you even get to the win percentage of your conference opponents, you've got that common opponents breakdown, which would end up going against the Tigers.
I think the magnitude of the losses as well. Like you got blown out by a Georgia team that has now been shown to be pretty mortal and has been blown out by somebody. You know, Louisville beat you by multiple scores on your home field. The committee's probably going to look disfavorably on that.
Yeah.
That's a word, disfavorably? That can't be a word.
Unfavorably.
It is now. I think it's a perfectly cromulent word.
I mean, if the committee can make it up, I can make up words, right?
Yep. 100%. Listen, it's just an invitational. You just get to see if you get the invitation. So, all right, enough college football playoff invitational talk. This is ball talk. That's what we do on Wednesdays. Coming up on the other side, let's just start right there. Georgia and Tennessee, obviously huge playoff implications, but what about the actual game? Where will it be decided? What is our thoughts in terms of Nico Iamaleava and whether he'll play and what kind of impact that might have? All that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast on Wednesdays. We do like to go inside the matchup. Save those best bets for Thursdays. It's a big game breakdown. And we do begin in Athens, where Tennessee will be arriving to take on their old SEC East foes. We have seen 2 years ago, this like very highly anticipated matchup, and it was Hendon Hooker and the like big high powered offense coming off the Alabama win. And while there were elements, like it was a heavy rain game for sure. The way that my memory has this, Kirby Smart and that defense kind of shut them down pretty early, and we're just able to sit on it the rest of the way. Now, the Georgia offense, I would say, is not as good as that Georgia offense was in 2022. The Georgia defense, I think, is probably the stronger part of the 2024 team, but I don't know if I would line those two up and take them. But we've also got big changes in terms of the Tennessee offense as well. Tom, when you start to break down this matchup, how much can we learn from previous Josh Heupel, Kirby Smart matchups that we could apply moving forward, looking at the Bulldogs and the Vols?
I don't know. Like the difficult part of that question is Josh Heupel's offenses have been much better in the past
Than this one.
than this one has been. So then you throw in like I expect him to play, but the mystery surrounding Nico, and like he's been in the concussion protocol. How healthy is he for this game? How prepared will he be? How much time will he spend practicing? The reports were that he practiced yesterday, so I assume he's going to get a full weekend. But it's just, how explosive can that passing attack finally look? Because even last week against Mississippi State, which is a horrible, horrible defense, like they looked better while Nico was in there in the first half. They hit some big throws, but they still didn't look incredibly dangerous to me. Like there were still problems. The only difference was they didn't drop as many passes as they have been all year. So I still think going into this game, the run game is going to be the focal point of Tennessee's offense, which it always has been. It's just they've had much more explosive passing to go along with it. I don't know if that will be there. And then on the other side, we spent a lot of time talking about Carson Beck, who is very, very turnover prone in the last month or so. He's been playing terribly. There aren't a lot of guys stepping up in the receiving core to kind of make plays out of nothing and give him a little bit of relief. The run game is it's an odd run game. Like they're good at staying on schedule with it. Like they have a high success rate, but they have basically no big runs. And it's really hard to keep drives going if you have to rely on your run game and there aren't any big runs. So you would think that for them to have a more success in this game offensively than they've had lately against anybody, you need to see that run game take a step forward. But again, for both of these teams, they're both going against really good run defenses. So how are they going to be able to do it? To me, it kind of comes down to Nico's been shaky all year. Carson Beck has been very shaky the last month. Can either of them get their crap together for this game? Because I think the one that does, that team is going to win. And if neither of them do,
Agree with that. You think about what Tennessee's biggest win was this year, right? The defense kept them in the game against Jalen Milroe, who certainly didn't have the level of juice, burst-wise, that he showed against Georgia in the first half or against LSU last week. And Tennessee's defense is going to have to keep them in this ball game as well, most likely, unless you think they can just light Georgia up, which I don't really. Like Ole Miss scored last week on Georgia, but Georgia still played hard. Ole Miss got them on a few formation stuff, but they also had very favorable field position in some of those instances. It's not like Ole Miss ran up and down the field on UGA. And I don't think at home that Tennessee can do that consistently. Tennessee's defense is going to have to create extra chances for them. They're going to have to create short fields. And look, that's very possible. Like Tate has come back from the tightrope surgery, but he hasn't come back effectively. And Tennessee has, I mean, you can kind of take your pick, but I think that we can reasonably say that Tennessee has a similar level of defensive line to what Ole Miss has. I think they should be able to get after UGA's offensive line. And maybe that like being at home for UGA solves that. Certainly there's a possibility there. But Georgia's offense has not really looked right for several weeks. I'm sure they'll try to scheme up some stuff, to Bell and throw the ball around to Lovett. But without McConkey and Bowers and playing a real schedule this year, or not a real schedule, because that kind of says what they played last year wasn't real. And I don't think that's true. I think that it was a fine schedule. It just wasn't very deep, obviously. The committee decided to leave them out last year after they lost a close one against Alabama. Playing a real schedule has kind of exposed them. I am very curious, and I do think Nico's playing, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
I think if he wasn't playing, this line would not be 10, okay? Because, like, right now you look at it, let's say home field, UGA, first night game in
3.5.
First good night game in a long while. Was Ole Miss They were what? They were a night game last year, right?
Can't. I would have to look it up.
I thought Ole Miss was a CBS game last
I thought
year.
it was a CBS game too.
Just went really long. It definitely finished at night. I can remember some of the plays.
There's daylight savings time.
And you have like weird betting stuff like in your brains. I had a lot of Georgia all game, and like they were cashing when it was definitely nighttime.
I remember.
No, Steve Wilson says it was a night game. So
okay.
Bud's gambling brain remembers correctly.
But like from a line standpoint, let's call Georgia like 6 points better on a neutral than Tennessee, which probably feels about right, I guess, given that Tennessee, when they have a win over Hurt Milroe and like nothing else good so far this year. And I think Tennessee's a good team. Like I've fairly invested on them making the playoffs, going 11-1, et cetera. I still believe in this team. I think they can win the game. But if somebody knew Nico was out, this would run out to like 14 because we saw the backup against Alabama, and it was only a play or two, but he was terrible. I mean, just trying to play like crazy hero ball stuff and just threw up an easy pick to the Tide. Can Tennessee's receivers win one-on-one? I think this is actually an interesting area because I think Georgia is gettable in the slot.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And they put Starks there, yeah.
Well, we'll see like who Tennessee can win on that. But in a weird way, I kind of trust Tennessee to scheme like a couple guys open, and then it's just going to play like the variance machine. Like, does Nico hit him or not, assuming he played? I could see Tennessee winning this one by hitting, like maybe two big explosive plays like they did against Alabama a couple years ago, and then the defense forcing some turnovers. And I think it's gettable. Can they block Georgia?
Georgia blocked them.
Yeah.
That's really what it is to me.
Because right now, Carson Beck says it's the inability to run. Like that is what Carson Beck is saying. Like what is wrong with the offense? Carson Beck's explanation is we can't run the football effectively right now. He has offered suggestions in terms of we need to figure out a different way to play it. He has even offered up himself, said like maybe I need to get involved in the run game. I don't.
Not really sure people want to see that. But.
Yeah, I didn't.
I do actually. I would love to see that.
With another pick last week, we've now increased our count to 12, leading the country in that category. Throw in 2 lost fumbles, that is 14 turnovers. Again, Carson Beck is saying I'm trying to force things, but I'm trying to force things because we can't run the football. The offensive line injury issues, as even all the way back to Saturday night's reaction show, have been one of the big talking points all through the week. I don't know if that's fixed. I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball on this Tennessee defensive front.
To Carson's comments, I agree with him that their inability to run the football is part of the problem. So I don't think it's total deflection.
But it sounds like deflection to me.
Not all those interceptions you've thrown have been because of your inability to run the football. They've been because you're just panicking and chucking the ball.
Right.
That's facts.
His performance under pressure is
pretty awful. Yeah.
It's a huge drop off from Carson Beck on schedule in rhythm. Which, I mean, shocker, but I just think that we expected from a quarterback who started the year in the Heisman Trophy discussion, in the NFL draft, first quarterback taken discussion. I just don't think that we expected him to look so common when it comes to the differences between the way that you perform on schedule and under pressure. And those changes have been much more like our expectations for a regular power conference quarterback. So, I don't know.
Let's see here.
Like you guys think Tennessee's pretty live to win this?
Yeah, but I'm not. I don't know. Like I think both of these teams are live to win it, honestly. And I know that sounds silly because one of them's favored by double digits, but I'm just saying. I think the spread is not confusing to me, but it's interesting to me in that it's like, So we still think Georgia, this current version of it, is 10 points better than anybody else in the SEC for the most part. That's, still one of the top teams. So I don't know. I think Tennessee can win it. I also think Tennessee is very capable of getting its ass kicked in this game because we've seen them like in the Oklahoma game, they won it, but the offense was horrible. The offense did not play well at Arkansas. So like we've seen them on the road in these spots play terrible football. So now they're on the road against Georgia. Can they get their act together on the road really for the first time this year? That's what remains to be seen because they haven't shown it to this point.
Money line, alt line. Like, but how about or there's probably a deficit or a margin that if Georgia can get out to with a strong start, I don't know if I trust Tennessee to be able to overcome it.
Definitely not.
Yeah,
and I think this is an important point because Georgia jumping on Texas early allowed Georgia to somewhat ignore like a lot of like the play action stuff that Texas does. Georgia not jumping all over Ole Miss early allowed Ole Miss to keep play action as a real consideration in the mind of those Georgia defenders, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's key. And if you look at Tennessee, like a lot of their stuff is that RPO stuff. That's going to matter quite a bit here. Like Tennessee is just a pure drop back team. I do think is kind of dead in the water. Although we thought that too against Bama late, and then Nico turned it on and carved it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why the spread, like there's like a median spread, and then there's also like a ceiling spread. And like when you're doing your calculations, they're both going to factor into this. Georgia, I think Chip's point is so spot on. Like it absolutely has the chance to just blow the doors off Tennessee, especially if they get game scripted out of the ball game. You know, I don't know that Georgia is a touchdown better than Tennessee on a neutral every day, but like Georgia's ceiling, I think, is probably way higher than Tennessee's.
And another thing too that I'm considering here is the up and down nature of the Georgia defense. Like it's been good, for most of the year. It's been great in some games, but it played horrible against Alabama. Responded the next week with I didn't know it was Auburn, but they responded the next week with a very good game against Auburn. Against Mississippi State, statistically, I mean, again, it's one of those situations we've mentioned it. Teams seem to be kind of coasting against Mississippi State, but still they allowed 31 points to Mississippi State. If you're Georgia, I don't care if you're coasting or not. That's a bad performance for you. The next week against Texas, we all remember what happened. So then last week against Ole Miss got carved up a little bit. Do they respond the same way they've responded the last two times they've struggled on defense? We'll see.
I think you'll see a lot of the Mertz game plan that Florida used against Tennessee, slowing the game down, boot stuff, not like obviously running him, but like I think you can throw short passes against Tennessee. Georgia has tried to get this screen game over this year, man. And like the communication's been weird. The timing's been weird. But like if you want to read into that, I mean, it's probably because they think like maybe their receivers are not the best at winning one-on-ones down the field. Maybe they're trying to limit how much influence Carson actually has on the game. And their pass protection stuff too has been an issue. Like Georgia's tackles have been kind of gettable, and then with Tate getting hurt and coming back, I would expect Georgia to keep trying that screen game a lot in this one because if nothing else, like they're completed at a high rate generally, unless you miscommunicate it like they did against Bama. And that's completed to a defender who takes it back away. But it also slows the game down. It makes Tennessee come up and tackle. That's something I would expect to see a lot of from UGA.
John Talty had a story on the Georgia offense on CBSSports.com this week. It was very good. I would suggest you go read it, as well as, reading Tom's quarterback power rankings, which go live on Wednesday.
They're already up. Getting yelled at about it right now.
Okay. Love to hear that. And in that, he included a note that I'd missed from post game. I think the description was that Lane Kiffin was like straight up giddy that Georgia had resorted to the screen game, which had let Ole Miss's coaching staff know they don't have any confidence in blocking us. Like they're already just trying to go to the same kind of game plan that an underdog has playing against better competition. I think that gave a big boost of confidence to the Ole Miss coaching staff, the defense in general. That I didn't think the screen game worked really well. You had some adverse conditions, obviously. They're in Oxford.
It hasn't worked. They just keep trying it.
Yeah, I know. It's just
I may just be like, maybe this is just what Georgia's offense is this year.
Yeah,
but the defense, the way they just absolutely slapped Texas has got to matter. Like that, if you're picking this game, that is still in your brain pretty hard.
Yeah. If you are Georgia, You do not want this to be a 3, 4, 6-point game in the fourth quarter. Because I do think that's how Tennessee wins. Just by
pressing.
I think that you're hanging around, and that I think that you would rather have Nico holding the football than Carson Beck in a go make something happen possession. I think if you're Georgia, you would like to have a nice 10 to 14 point lead and only have to sweat the cover. And then you're just getting out of there with the win that you need to keep all of your hopes and dreams alive moving forward.
The weather for this game, by the way, is pretty nice for chucking deep balls. We got a projected 3-mile-an-hour wind in 54-degree weather.
54. That's like freezing, though, isn't it, for people in Georgia?
For us, yeah, I'd break out the sweater.
No, for Florida, but not for Georgia.
For Georgia, it's not freezing, but it's probably the first. I don't know. We got a lot of Georgia fans listen to this show.
It's the first Barber jacket game.
Is it? Yeah. Is this the first one? You let us know in the chat.
Say it's 52 here, and I'm going golfing in a hoodie and shorts later this afternoon.
It is what is it? It is 78 here.
We are a divided country, and you'll see that in Sanford Stadium with Carhartts and Barber jackets, baby. There's two sides to this.
We got some Chamber of Commerce weather coming. 82, 82, 79, 76, 78, 80, 82 for the next 7.
8:12 a.m. tailgate got rocking and rolling with some bitterness. Monday, you said you would talk about Bobo. Please talk about how he's inherited back-to-back national championship winners to potentially missing out on the playoffs twice. Literal bottom tier OC.
Did they miss out on the playoff last year because of Bobo? Or because they lost to Alabama?
I don't know.
I don't know that. I mean, look, I think we've been clear on the show that Bobo is a step down from Todd Monken.
Which, I mean,
really, really good.
Yeah, like.
Yeah. But I don't know that he's bottom tier.
Yeah.
They've had a ton of coaching staff changes too. I think it's not like they just swapped in Bobo and changed nobody else.
Oh, like wide receivers coaches have been
receivers coaches. Do they have a different offensive line coach now? They had a couple years ago.
Well, they had Matt Luke,
right?
Good point. Maybe not all. Never mind. Let's save that for a Georgia autopsy after the season, depending on whether they do or don't accomplish some of their goals. Well, coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to more of the games of Week 12 that have our attention, including the Longhorns' trip to Fayetteville to take on Arkansas. Some more thoughts from the Big Ten that we didn't get a chance to hit on in Tuesday's CBS Sports Network show, and everyone's favorite mid-game breakdown. Next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, where we're taking a look at some of the big games heading into the weekend. Let's see. Grab this from the tailgate earlier. 8:17 a.m. One of our friends said, what are Bud's thoughts on Marcus Satterfield stepping down as OC in Nebraska, hiring Dana Holgorsen to be the OC effective immediately? I mentioned that because we did address that on the Tuesday CBS Sports Network show. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. You can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Bud, you want to offer anything else here for the live tailgate? Might not.
I don't think we need to dogpile the guy.
Yeah.
I'm been pretty clear in my thoughts. I think that was a really bad hire by Matt Rule. It felt like a hiring your buddy, not hiring like the best possible guy or even close to the best possible guy you could have got for Nebraska. I thought Raiola was kind of crazy for signing with the team that had him as the offensive coordinator. And we'll see if he stays at Nebraska, now with whoever they end up going with long term. But I know teams will be interested, and Nebraska probably have to pony up a pretty big offer to keep him. So Assuming everybody hits the market behind the scenes regardless, but I don't think he's going to actually enter the portal, but could be wrong. I just thought it was a bad hire, and sometimes you can just see these coming, but sometimes you see them coming and you're wrong too. Like we're not omniscient. Track record is really sketch though.
It is USC and Nebraska, one of the most interesting games with very little significance in terms of the larger national college football picture.
Also,
unless
I know he's an LSU fan, but like if you're an LSU fan, you should watch our Tuesday show because we're talking a lot of like national big picture stuff too. Maybe we get a game or two out of the way that like for big game breakdown that maybe you don't want to hear about. You can skip that part if you want. We don't care. But like it's still a pretty good show. For a 45, 50-minute show, when you cut the commercials out, there's probably still like 30 or 35 you really want to listen to as an SEC fan.
Good point. 100%. Okay, so here you go, SEC fans. The Texas Longhorns hitting the road to go take on Sam Pittman and Arkansas. Now, it was, if our memory serves correctly, a win against Texas that made everybody really fall in love with Sam Pittman early on. When you're like, this guy, look at what he did for us. Now, I haven't checked the Gaming Commission. I will do that here shortly. But what chances do we give the Razorbacks to pull off an upset?
They've got a chance. I mean, let's look at Texas so far this year. Like, what has Texas done to make you think that they are impervious to being upset on the road against Arkansas? They were nearly upset on the road against Vanderbilt. They played well on the road against Michigan, but other than that, they've been home or at a neutral site every single week. And they haven't, when you go like, this is the thing we've been arguing about or whatever, their resume, not exactly impressive as far as it comes to who they've beaten. Like they have a really impressive loss. They don't have a very impressive win. And this is the Arkansas team that at home beat Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Texas is a beatable squad. And I mentioned it. Texas looked great against Florida last week. But as I talked about on the reaction show, to me, without DJ Lagway, Florida is one of those teams where if you get ahead of them in the first quarter, they're going to understand they have no shot to win. And they're going to turtle up. And then you can just keep kicking them and kicking them and kicking them and kicking them. If Arkansas gets off to a good start here, I don't think they're going to lay down in quite the same way that we saw Florida do last week. But at the same time, Quinn Ewers, even if Florida wasn't playing a great football game, physically he looked better in that game than he had at any point since coming back from being hurt, and even maybe a little bit before he finally did pull himself out when he was hurt. So that is encouraging if I'm Texas. So it'll be interesting for me. The thing I want to focus on is because they still don't really run the ball very well. Can Quinn Ewers make those vertical passes that he was making last week that we haven't seen him make? Because this Arkansas defense, like we could talk about their record and, they're one of like the 3 SEC teams that isn't ranked. But statistically, this is a good Arkansas football team. Like they're good on offense. They're good on defense. They're not elite at anything, but they're not bad at anything either. So they are very much a factor in this game at home, capable of pulling off an upset like this. So this is not, if I'm a Texas fan, I'm a little nervous going into this one.
I don't know, Tom. Like I'm very convinced by their strong wins against Colorado State, a possible bowl team in Michigan, UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma. They stayed within 15 to Georgia at home. That was pretty solid. 3-point win against the likely 6-6 Vanderbilt team. There's a lot there to convince me. And they beat a Florida's third-string quarterback. Pretty bad. There's a lot there to make me believe this is a really, really good Texas team. Facetious, but look, they have shown weakness at times this year. The game that concerns you, I think, is the Arkansas-Ole Miss game.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what do we do about that? Because that game was at home.
They didn't have Braxton. They didn't have a couple of guys in the secondary, and Ole Miss just ran by them.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? As much as I think Tom is correct about Ewers maybe looking healthier and more comfortable, getting Bond back also increases his comfort level quite a bit. And they had Bond back last week, and that was important, I think. Arkansas has real D linemen, and I don't really know who has Texas faced who have like legitimate D linemen. I think Michigan does, I think Oklahoma does, and I think Georgia does. And they were very like professional in their two approaches against Michigan and against Oklahoma. and they kind of panicked a little bit against Georgia. So how do they play this? I think Texas should be fine, but Taylor Green is kind of a wild card too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The game against Ole Miss was at home, but then they've had a week off. Now they're back at home in this spot right now. You absolutely need to force turnovers. Like you need you need to create some you need to prevent Steve Sarkisian's Texas offense from just totally getting into a rhythm, because so much of the way that these things build upon each other are what are going to open things up for the run game. If you get short possessions, if you are able to get a couple 3 and outs, if you're able to have a good special teams play to help out with some field position, then you really give yourself that opportunity, because that to me is the path for Arkansas to be able to pull off this upset, is to get Quinn kind of moving backwards a little bit. Because with Texas's offensive line, we have something that we see all the time in college football. The players are talented. The performance might not meet the expectation. And there have been times this season where, whether it is in the run game or whether it is even in pass protection, a offensive line that I know has multiple NFL players will have a dumbass holding call. When like a
All right. They said the right tackle's healthy,
okay,
so that's helpful.
it is helpful. But do you disagree with the analysis? Aren't there some
No, I
times
think
when
you're
you're
exactly
watching
right.
this Texas offense where you're like, guys, you guys are too good to be doing this dumbass stuff right now. And this is the kind of Arkansas defensive line that can expose that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Any other matchup points that you got your eyes on here?
I mean, you guys touched on it a little bit with the way Ole Miss tore them apart. Like, if there is a weakness to this Arkansas defense, it is in the passing game. Their secondary has been susceptible at times. Like, the Ole Miss game really skews a lot of their overall numbers because it was just that epically bad in the game. But even against LSU, they weren't great, and against Tennessee they were great. So it's like, which version of that defense shows up? I think if they're healthier this week than they were in that Ole Miss game, maybe we'll see I mean, it's hard to imagine they'll be worse, but it is going to come down to that, because Texas has very good wide receivers. I don't know if we've mentioned that at any point this year. So they're very talented. They're going to be very difficult to stop, and it is going to come down to, can they pressure Quinn Ewers and make him make mistakes? Because Quinn Ewers, as we have seen too, not exactly shy about making mistakes when he's under pressure.
Yep. All right, let's see what else anything from the Big Ten we didn't get to hit on. Wait, what do we listen, let's just grab the wheel. Illinois, Michigan State. What do we think?
Illinois is coming off a bye.
Yeah.
Hopefully Luke Altmaier can improve on his recent play and start getting back to making smarter decisions and quicker decisions. If they do, I think Illinois handles Michigan State pretty easily, because I do think that the way they play defense against Aiden Childs, who will throw the ball up there and will make mistakes, is very advantageous to an Illinois defense that forces mistakes and forces turnovers.
I agree with that.
I've got your observation about how the Oregon game might be the moment where Luke Altmaier like clicked back into an older software.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had been upgraded. He had been, things had kind of progressed along the way, and then some old bad habits kind of crept up after that really tough start against the Ducks in Eugene. And so that's where I'm looking at Barry Lunney, and I'm looking at that Illinois offense, and just wondering if that off week, playing at home, Michigan State coming to town, a team that you should be able to beat. I think it's a good chance to be able to hit refresh. If not, then I don't know. You're just kind of working your way to the Beef of Brady's Bowl or whatever it's going to be for the Fighting Illini.
I also think too, like in the secondary, I think Illinois' receivers will have a better matchup against Michigan State than they certainly did in the Oregon game, and to a lesser extent in the Minnesota game.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so Kansas, we'd been talking about them. Like, they have been playing better, and they finally had that breakthrough game against Iowa State. They get the big win, And because of the confidence that you've got from like literally a dead team walking, just going out there trying to ruin people's day, you would think that team would be the perfect spoiler for a BYU team that has like literally through controversial and crazy ups and downs, like remain undefeated in first place in the Big 12. But there are 3 words that I cannot get out of my head, but they have nothing to do with the football, the X's and O's, the depth charts, or anything else that we're here to discuss. So I need facts, because all I can think about with this game, the 3 words are Provo at night. What in the world am I going to do thinking that this ain't going to break the way of the chocolate milk with like Provo at – okay, Kansas, I get you're playing better. You're going to beat BYU. The game's at noon, right? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's Provo at night. Like what – how, do you think BYU has an actual like on paper edge here so that they would be they would be able to get this thing done in a neutral, that they would be able to get this thing done in a vacuum? Like what are the reason why a BYU fan should feel confident in something other than vibes?
I'll tell you why BYU should be confident, Chip, because they're 9-0 and they're facing a 3-6 team. So they're a big 3-point favorite. Go Big 12. No, listen, this is not BYU fans. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying you're not a good team. You're 9-0. You're a good team. But let's look at the last few weeks. Like the 22-21 win at Utah, a win at UCF, which was, nice, but still wasn't a great game by you guys. And then you had the close call against Oklahoma State. You had a close call with Baylor. It's the same thing we talked about with Miami. We don't think Miami's a bad team. It's just when you keep playing these close games, you put yourself at risk of having a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you make a mistake. So the more BYU plays these close games, if they make a mistake in this spot, like Kansas has shown, it has been an explosive team in recent weeks. It is starting to round into form. It beat Iowa State last week, another team that was undefeated not too long ago. It nearly beat Kansas State the week before. Like this Jayhawks team is playing much better. You can't afford to make mistakes. Like the Utah team you beat the other day was on like their 3rd string quarterback. Like they'd fired their OC. They were like, that was a team that had been in shambles all season long. And yeah, it was their Super Bowl and it was at home and they put everything they had into the game and they nearly beat you when you're supposed to be the superior team in that matchup, just like you're supposed to be the superior team in this matchup. So yeah, man, you need to play better than you have been. Like you need to have a good game. Being at home is great. Being Provo at night is great. We remember the last time what happened when a Kansas team went to Provo. Didn't work out well for the Wildcats.
Their brains broke. They just couldn't handle it.
Avery Johnson threw 1 billion interceptions and it just completely snowballed out of control. You can do that again because Jalen Daniels can make mistakes too. He can turn the ball over. You can absolutely bury this team. But my suggestion is bury them. Get it over with quick. Don't let this team hang around. Stop putting yourself in a position where you're in the 4th quarter and you need some help and you need a little luck to get out with the win.
Love it. I mean, look, if you consistently play field goal games against teams that we think are somewhere between like 18th and 50th in the country from a power rating standpoint, then you know what? You're also realistically like somewhere between 18th and 50th in the country from a field goal standpoint or from a power rating standpoint. Like, I'm not really sure BYU is a top 20 level team. Pretty damn sure they're not a top 15 level team, but they keep winning the coin flips, and they're not going to be respected for keeping winning coin flips because there's really not much skill in that. Like a little bit like coaching, kicking game quarterback, but they're not showing dominance that they are a clear level above everybody else in the Big 12. Like they're just keep playing at that level. Nobody in the Big 12 is really all that good. It's just kind of probably like the worst Power 5 league we've ever seen, right?
Whoa.
In terms of lacking a top end team. But I think maybe there's an argument for that, like the 2009 ACC. Was that right?
Yeah, I mean the dark years of the ACC when they went 2-13 in BCS games was a There was a lot of Virginia Tech ACC champs in that season, in that run,
So, I mean, like the best, like the worst P5 league in at least a decade, though, I would say. Because the lack of a quality top end team has a lot of NFL players on it. So, can Kansas win? Yeah, but I kind of think BYU wins this.
Yeah.
To be honest, like Kansas, are they playing that much better, or are they just like not like losing in critical situations?
I think
they've
they're playing
close a lot of the year.
I know. And all the way back to that West Virginia game in September when they had a lead, lightning delay, come back and totally poop their pants. Like,
I also don't think Retzlaff has been as bad now as he was early in the season. He has cut down on some of like the really crazy bad pick stuff, or stuff that should have been picked. Whereas like Holstein keeps throwing it for Pitt. Retzlaff has kind of like reduced that somewhat.
And they're not going to throw up some prayers.
He does. Kansas also doesn't have Utah's defense.
Yep.
Like I think BYU will score.
Me too. I think they'll probably score somewhere
30?
in the range of. I think both these teams will score points. I think they'll probably combine for more than 55.5. But I'm not making best bets here. All right. Speaking of the Big 12, any Utah Colorado thoughts?
I think Colorado might blow the doors off them.
Yeah.
I think if you look at Utah, like I just said, they treated last week kind of like their Super Bowl. They lose the game. The AD's complaining about the officials, saying it's rigged, and they're regretting coming to the Big 12, blah, blah, blah. Like, you just get the feeling that there could be a serious letdown from the Utes in this game. Whereas Colorado, very much alive in the Big 12, very much alive in the playoff hunt, a whole lot to play for. You don't really see a lot of blowouts in the Big 12, but I think there's a good chance this could be one of them.
Rose is out for the season too for Utah
Mhm.
right now. So Wilson's the quarterback again, or are they just going to run some Wildcat?
I don't think I've used this principle yet on in 2024, but we've got big refractory period situations here for Utah. I don't know if they're ready to get back into action.
Kyle is getting up there.
I think that's going to be real tough to meet the level of compete. And also, compliment to Colorado, you went down like 10-0, and then you just came roaring back and finished them off. It was that slow start out of an off week, not something that should be surprising, but then sort of flipping the game on its head after that is something good teams do. So Colorado's a good football team, and I think that Utah, not a good football team, coming out of all the emotions of last week, going to Boulder, good football team. This, I agree. I could see it being a great day for the Buffs.
Keithy is also out for the year, right?
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. Everybody on the team's dead, pretty much. It's just every week they're announcing like 4 guys are out for the year.
I'd be shocked if Colorado lost this. Like this, I know the spread is basically like what Tennessee, Georgia is, but
Tennessee beating Georgia feels more likely than Utah beating Colorado.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it would just take like an unbelievable defensive game, I guess, from Utah.
Maybe.
It's possible. I mean,
Doubt it.
Texas Tech probably beats them last week if they don't get that crazy, rough in the passer call. Baylor had a guy slip down twice.
Well, I don't know if Texas Tech beats them if they don't get the roughing the passer call.
You don't think so?
No.
It felt like they had pretty good momentum, but no guarantee they would have gone down and scored.
I also think it's different in Boulder than it would have been in Lubbock.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. Missouri, South Carolina.
South Carolina, America's team.
America's team.
Do what Oklahoma couldn't.
Get them out.
Get them out the paint.
No real thoughts. I've not thought about it.
I mean, if Brady Cook doesn't play, it's hard to pick Missouri, even though Missouri beat Oklahoma last week without Brady Cook, because here's a sentence I never really thought I was going to say at the beginning of the year. Lenoris Sellers is a much better quarterback than Jackson Arnold has been. And I think South Carolina's offense has been a much better offense than Oklahoma's has been. So you can't play that same kind of 9-6 game that they were playing all day with Oklahoma at home before things got ridiculously stupid in the fourth quarter. Like, you do that against this Gamecocks defense. Yeah. I think South Carolina can control this game from start to finish. I mean, there's a reason they're nearly 2 touchdown favorites.
Yeah. I think South Carolina's best football has been the last month. Like, they are playing their best football of the season right now. And that's not just the 3-game winning streak. I would say that basically after the Ole Miss game, you've got the 2-point Alabama loss, then the win 35-9 Oklahoma, 45-20 Texas A&M, 28-7 against Vanderbilt. They know who they are, and they are playing at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm impressed with South Carolina. That one will be, of course, of the utmost attention for America as they go and they root on the Gamecocks.
Eli versus America.
Tulane Navy is fun. Talk about a team that's playing their best football of the season. John Summerall's crew has been kicking ass here in recent weeks. Navy was able to steady the ship just a little bit, but in terms of the American Athletic Conference title race, this game is absolutely massive. It is going to be in Annapolis. Can Tulane get stops?
Can Navy get stops?
No, I think Tulane can score. I think this game comes down to Navy getting stops.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think they can get enough stops. They have faced the triple before, not this triple, but remember when Summerall was at Troy, they had faced the triple, I think both years. They went up there last year, and then Troy came to them in 2022. That sound right?
Something like that, yeah.
So at least they've seen it, which I think is important to note because you don't really see any triple in the Sun Belt. So this staff has at least seen the triple a good bit. This is the second best defense Navy has faced so far this year, unless you think Memphis is better. And I don't really, I guess.
I don't.
So it's probably the second best defense Navy's faced. Now, granted, it's closer to everything else they've faced than it is directionally to the Irish, but it's still a pretty good step up in terms of like quality of play, I think, from what they've seen. Like USF's defense is hot trash. Like who else they played? North Texas, maybe. There's a lot of really bad defenses that Navy has faced so far. And they are legitimately better, but I think Tulane can get enough stops.
If Darian Minson turns the ball over, though, that's how this game flips.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how Navy wins and is able to get a huge victory. Tulane with 0 American Athletic Conference losses so far on the season, currently in first place. Tied for first place in the standings along with Army. So
technically half a game behind Army, Chip.
Technically half a game behind. They are tied in the loss column.
Mm-hmm.
Would be one way to
tell Chip's not a baseball fan. He doesn't understand how that works.
No, I definitely don't. Hey, shout out to Brandon Marcello, our friend and colleague at CBS Sports. He's hanging out in the tailgate, chopping it up. We appreciate you hanging out. Brandon offers rematch South Carolina with LSU today, and the Gamecocks win by a touchdown or more. The running game has some new twists in it since then. Offense has improved.
And shouts.
That's interesting. Wait, the quarterback for South Carolina was hurt in that game or not hurt?
Yeah, Sellers got hurt. Like he didn't. I think it was either in the late first half or in the third quarter.
And that's what Ward Manuel was talking about on the teleconference.
Yeah. On a neutral, I would still take LSU because I think South Carolina's secondary is very gettable.
Right.
But they have not faced many, if any, good passing quarterbacks so far.
Is Boise State in trouble at San Jose State?
No. San Jose State's defense. I mean, I could take the Sparties against other kind of mid-range teams. I don't think I could trust them against Boise State.
I agree with that. Let's see. When they've played Washington State, when they've played Colorado State, and even though they only allowed 13 points against Oregon State, that defense gives up a lot of yards. So I think that'll be something to definitely keep an eye on. Washington State ran the ball 49 times for 237 yards against the San Jose State defense. Though for one of the better passing attacks in the Mountain West, it'll be something to keep an eye on. I don't know if they can block Boise State up front, as we've talked about that Boise State defensive line that's gotten a lot better over the last couple of weeks. But it is Ken Niumatalolo facing the same predicament that everyone in the Mountain West is facing. Do you want to let Mad Dog Madsen get out there and beat you and like go ask San Diego State? He did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he's at least shown that is something that's a little bit dangerous for San Jose State. I'm going to agree. I'm going to say they're not on upset alert.
Also, to be blunt, even if San Jose State's game plan is take Ashton Genty out of the game, I don't think San Jose State's capable of taking Ashton Genty out of the game.
Everybody's got a plan until they hit in the mouth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You guys watch it on Friday?
Oh, no. God, no. I'm not watching that crap.
Am I going to have to order it?
My buddy's ordering it. I'm going to go watch it.
Okay. Is it Showtime?
It's Netflix, sure. I thought.
Oh.
I don't think you have to order it. I think it's just on Netflix. But I am not. No.
What about UCLA Washington on Friday night?
That's what I'll be watching.
Yeah.
Real American football.
Washington's got to have this one because they finished with Oregon. So like this is their go to a bowl game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the problem. UCLA can win that game.
Yep.
They can.
Hottest team in America right now.
I mean, I totally understand why Washington's favored, but UCLA's playing all right.
Let's see.
If they're able to do to Jonah Coleman what they did to Caleb Johnson, UCLA is very live in that game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Run defense has been all right. All right. What about was Thomas Castellanos' last game as the starting quarterback the one that Tom Brenneman called? Is that the way that this is going to line up?
It might be.
Because
is it a permanent benching? I saw you stepping away from the team for a couple of days after being benched.
I saw a tweet earlier during the show that Bill O'Brien said he is not back with the team.
But he's back with the team, but he said Grayson James is our starter moving forward.
I mean, Bill O'Brien has to run what he thinks is best to run. Didn't Milroe also say that Bill O'Brien told him you should play tight end? So, like, maybe there's an inability to use quarterback mobility for Bill O'Brien.
But here's hold on a second. But even when Grayson James is in there, I mean, we're not dealing with an explosive downfield passing attack.
Why you can't
look? Some of these guys like plays over players. I'm just saying, like they want the play to be run how they want it run, and if you don't do it that way, and like sometimes you got to realize like the player is more important than the play.
It is impossible to say the name Grayson James without it sounding like a mom yelling at her child.
Grayson James, you get down here right now.
That's what I'm saying. There is no way. Like anytime you hear that name, it's like Grayson James, get back in your room.
There's a couple spots on this Week 12 slate where I think there's some real hammer potential. And this is where I'll be wrong, I'm sure. But either based on the team that is the favorite or the team that is, the underdog, like the Boston College situation is like, do you think that this Boston College team right now is positioned to go into Dallas against an SMU team that just is coming out of an off week and going to go take them down? I don't. And as I've been digging in on SMU, the thing that I'm lingering to as a differentiator beyond like the already top level stuff that is that I think that their defensive front has done a good job. They've stayed healthy. I don't think they're overwhelmingly deep with difference makers there, but from a coaching and a performance standpoint, I think defensively they've done a really good job here in this late little stretch. And as they go through the rest of their season, the final 3 games, trying to land the plane and win the ACC, Like they are going to be heavy favorites against Boston College and Virginia and Cal. And maybe the offense is a little bit out of rhythm. Maybe they go out there and they commit a couple turnovers. But I think that if you want to have confidence in SMU being able to get this thing done, I think it is with the way the defense has played recently.
You guys have any thoughts on Kansas State, Arizona State?
I think it's like one of the best games to watch of the weekend.
Well, then, yeah, tell me about it. What you think?
Scatterbo practiced yesterday.
Yes,
So
he did.
that's encouraging. I think that Arizona State's really live to win the game. Avery Johnson looked healthier the last time he was out. So
And he had an off week, too, to get ready.
I would expect him to be back kind of full strength here. Both these teams are still fairly live in the Big 12, actually. Like more live than I think people realize. So I don't know, like, who would create more chaos if they win? Probably Arizona State, but like it's not insane to think they could still win this league. They've done a nice job, and Kansas State has as well. Like Kansas State lost a lot on that defense from last year. Who can throw it better? Because both teams should be able to have some success running.
I think, obviously, this is like dumb football, but Kansas State especially needs to have the ground game going to open things up for the passing attack.
Agreed.
And when Kansas State cannot throw the ball, they cannot offense. So it is extremely important that they be able to get out there and go against this Arizona State team. I've got sneaking suspicion that Kansas State will be okay, but it is not my strongest. It is not my strongest thought. I think in terms of that game. Clemson Pitt.
Clemson.
I think Clemson, Pitt has traditionally given Clemson a lot of trouble, but that has been against the like Chad Morris and his tree of offensive guys. We don't really know how the Garrett Riley offense will face Narduzzi. They didn't play last year, right?
No, yeah, their last game was in 2021. It is one of the few ACC programs Dabo does not have a winning record against. Now, granted, it's only 2-2, but like that's like Pat Narduzzi famously, whenever anybody would complain about the Atlantic and Coastal divisions, he would barely be like, "It's not that hard. Just beat Clemson. Why are you complaining? Huh? Just beat Clemson." He's got wins in the 2016 season and the 2021 season. Then in the 2017 or 2018 ACC championship game, Clemson's got a win, and then another regular season win under the Tigers' belt as well. So they're 2-2. This being the rubber match between Dabo and Narduzzi.
Nice.
But I think that did y'all see Sammy Brown last week? The freshman linebacker got a lot more run. He's
legit, dude.
He was looking good. So I
saw what he said about Enter Sandman?
No.
What
He's like, that song's a banger.
Never heard it before. He's like, man,
yeah,
kind of hyped. To me, the reason why Clemson was able to go out there and go to Blacksburg and get that win, a lot of it was thanks to the defense. I think the defense is going to continue the narrative and the storylines of how this Pitt offense has kind of come back to earth after a meteoric start to the season. Even Corey, our friend in the tailgate, says Pitt can't block anyone. More injuries to the offensive line. This will be an ass kicking. Noted.
Yeah, defeatist fans. I can't really pay attention to them.
Anything else you want to turn our attention to before we break and start to get set for locks?
No, I've got HQ coming up here soon. So
yeah.
Check them out on CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports app, CBSSportsHQ.com. And we will be back at Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for the best time of the week. It's going to be our Week 12 locks. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.